break, and we're going to talk about boundaries. And boundaries are juicy. You know, to me, a boundary is this is where I end and you begin. So a boundary is for me. It's not for somebody else. A boundary keeps me safe. It doesn't keep you out. What I mean by that is I want you to feel empowered for your boundary. You get to change your boundaries based on your experience. If you need a boundary that says, stop, stay there, don't move, that's your boundary. If I work on some issues around that, get more comfortable, then I can say, come closer, okay, there. I just changed my boundary based on my own experience. So don't look at it upon like, oh, I got wishy-washy because I'm constantly changing. I think if you keep going back and forth, you need to look. But to change a boundary based on your new sense of awareness of yourself, your experiences, that's a natural process. We also have personal boundaries and we have professional boundaries. And I believe, in my experiences, they overlap a lot. So it's hard to just delineate, these are my professional boundaries and these are my personal boundaries. To some degree we can, but from a essence standpoint, we can't. If I have a hard time saying no in my personal life, I guarantee you, I'm gonna have a hard time saying no when I'm in my massage session. If I have a challenge with my personal financial relationship, I'm gonna have issues with my business financial relationship. So the beauty of that is if you wanna work on tightening or understanding your professional boundaries, go ahead and practice in your personal life. If you want to also work on your personal life, be aware when you're working on your professional boundaries. They are going to overlap or work in conjunction. And again, my experience with us massage therapists is that one of the biggest boundary issues that we have is around time management and around finances and fees. So it's really good to get clear of what those boundaries are. Let's say around fees. Most of us have a cancellation policy. It can be, an example would be, mine is a 24-hour cancellation policy. What I put on my intake is, I have a 24-hour cancellation policy and I am understanding of emergency and unavoidable circumstances. Otherwise, the full rate would need to be applied. When unavoidable emergency situations, it's up to me to decide, not for the client. What I mean by that, if a client says, yeah, Prepa, I'm calling you because I have a session with you in 15 minutes and I just can't get away from work. I just got a lot of work piled on me. And I'm thinking to myself, I can't get away from work either. I'm waiting for you. And to me, that's not an emergency situation. Now, you take the risk of your boundaries being clear that other people might not respect those boundaries. So that client may not understand that. My experience is if a client doesn't really respect your boundary, it might be okay that that person, if they decide to no longer be your client, that might be okay because of that. It probably is okay that they're not. So we have to know that we can't control what somebody else's, their response, their reaction. We only can control of how we put ourselves out. So to get the clarity, not just in our verbiage of what we say, but how we embody it. When I became clear with my personal financial relationship with money, boy, did I become clear with my business. That's like around cancellation. I do not want to charge people for a missed session within 24 hours. And I do. And that's like the clarity of it too. It's not like I'm thinking, woohoo! You know, I just went ahead and just made an extra, $70 today and nobody showed up. No, I don't want that. But the clarity of the respect of the profession, respect of my time. And when I became really clear, my clients actually became really clear where there were times where it was a little borderline whether I would charge them or not from an emergency standpoint. And I said, I really believe that, that's okay, I won't charge you. No,
I'm going to pay for the session today. That was interesting. And it was because of also the clarity that I had around that issue, around cancellation and fees. Even fees, there's times in your profession, if you're practicing long enough, that you might be raising your fee based on circumstances in your profession. That can be challenging and tricky also. I don't think there's any protocol to do that. I do believe that it is beneficial to give your clients an advance notice if that's going to take place, meaning you might have a little sign around your inside your office, outside your office, the reception area. You know, it's April, and you might say on July 1st, fees will be changed to correspond with this. So you're giving them an advanced notice. I think that that's good. And some clients, of course, may not be your regular clients, and they may call, and a year later they think, wow, you changed your fee. Yes, that's what happens. I did something that was interesting that many people had a little bit issue with. I mean, other therapists didn't really agree, but it worked for me. When I changed my fee some years ago, I decided to not change my fee for my existing clients. To me, that was a gratitude for helping build my business. So new clients that came in would be at a new rate. And I knew that there might be a challenge with some new clients that knew old clients and so forth. So to make that more palatable, and also I think more ethical and by me, was that any existing client that stayed at that rate, if they did not book a session and come in for 6 months, then they would be bumped up to the new rate. But if they continued to come within 6 months, then they would be stayed at the same rate. And that people, I think, understood and received well. So there's many ways to work at it. I just think that the understanding of really getting your boundaries and being clear that, yes, of course there are exceptions, but really watch where you feel that there's stress, that you're feeling anxiety over those issues. Countertransference, that's coming in. Your own issues around somebody not approving, not liking you, that you may not feel worthy enough to be able to ask for what you want and what you need. So look at those countertransference issues that come in. Boundaries around time. You know, if you're late in your personal life, you're going to be coming in when your client is in the waiting room waiting for your 5 o'clock session, and you're there at 4:59 or maybe 5:01. If you have a hard time adhering to a time frame, that's going to show up in your professional life. When I first started off and didn't have a full clientele, I had lots of room between sessions. And I remember one particular session where I thought, well, it's an hour massage, but I have time. Well, this person's going to love it. I'm going to give them an extra 15 minutes. I gave them an extra 15 minutes. They got off the table, and they were upset. They had an appointment that they were going to that they didn't verbalize to me, but that's not up to them to do that. Our agreement was an hour massage. So I learned from that aspect of, I can still do that if I want. You're welcome to give people more time. To check in though, to say, you know, we're about that time of an hour. I do have more time available, and you could either say, and that no charge, I'm willing to give you that extra time, or I really think that we're at an area that really needs some work. I would like another 10 minutes, and it would be $10. Is that okay with you? Whatever that is. But it's good to inform that client around, you know, the time frame around that. Same thing with interrupting, right? Your client comes in, how are you doing? And they start talking. And you know that you set aside maybe 10 minutes for that intake. 10 minutes is going by, 15 minutes are going by, and they're still going, and they're crying and telling you about their dog dying, and you're thinking, like, yeah, how do I? Your boundary issue around that. To still be compassionate and empathetic reflective listening and say, you know what, thank you so much for telling me that. That's really important for me to know that you're under this kind of stress. Let's go handle it on the table. That's my patent line. Let's go handle it on the table. So that time management is also a boundary issue. Any other boundary thoughts before we get into also sexuality, which is a big boundary too for people? Anything around boundaries that come up in your practice?
I'm curious about energetic sensitivity
Yeah.
versus countertransference and transference, and the difference, if there is a difference.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a delineation between if it's a countertransference or if you're really able to feel energetically. For instance, we can refuse to give treatment to anyone for basically any reason. Even though it says discrimination against discrimination, we still have a right as massage therapists to refuse treatment. And some of it may be because we don't feel comfortable with the person. Is that countertransference? Or is it we are really picking up energetically that it's not a good fit for us? I would say one way to see if it's countertransference, if it's repetitive, if it's coming up with other clients. If it's coming up with other clients, there may be a countertransference issue. So that's one aspect, to know if it's repetitive. To also know to look at if there's some things that are going on in your personal life that are always coinciding to you feeling uncomfortable for certain clients. It could be as simple as, let's say, when you have an interaction with your significant other and it doesn't go so well, and then you come in and something your male client might say or a female client might say that might trigger off a relationship dynamic, and you're not feeling comfortable about that, that's a countertransference issue, right? So I think it's beneficial to explore the countertransference. And again, the best way to explore that I know of, being a proponent of psychotherapy, is through counseling and psychotherapy, through supervision, to really look at what am I bringing in to the session that is creating this aversion or judgment or challenge. How is it changing my energetic dynamic of me being a conduit of healing energy? If we have stuck energy in our bodies, we know that we're not being a good conduit of healing energy. So if something is coming up with the client, we have to know, boy, I need to really look at what's my part of influence that I'm not being optimal in this moment. Let's say, I believe that in viewing emotion or being part of emotion, if I am not comfortable with my own gamut of emotions, let's say anger, if I'm uncomfortable with my own anger, and I don't think it's healthy, or I judge it, or I squash it down, I am not going to be present with somebody else's anger. Or I sure won't give them the freedom to express the depths of it. So even in that, it's interesting to look at, well, what am I apprehensive about? Do I not like whiny people? Whiny people really get on my nerves. Well, your client's going to come in session after session, my elbow hurts, and you're thinking, and it might be really hard for you to do that. But from an energetic standpoint, yeah, it is a fine line for that. But I think if it's repetitive, it's interesting to see if it's a countertransference. So it's good to sit with it, to really energetically sit with it within ourselves. Is this my influence of a countertransference? Ask the word yes. See if what happens in that energetic center. Say the word no.
So, I don't know, I'm sure you have rituals before
Yeah.
sessions, but I
Right.
always say, may the session be in this person's highest good to receive and my highest good to give. And if ever for me something weird comes up, I kind of go back to the statement and I check, I'm like, okay, are these boundaries still intact?
Right.
And if not, is it something that's coming from me or something coming from them?
Right.
So there's like knowing that I have that original framework to come back to as a boundary has really helped me.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah, that's an aspect of a boundary too, is taking care of ourselves by having enough time between sessions, by doing even rituals of washing our hands and just even, I wash all the energy that doesn't serve me off and leave it to energy of the universe to take care of itself and heal. We have to watch enmeshment with our clients. Like if we're thinking about our clients over and over and over again, yes, there is an aspect that we're being compassionate and concerned, but we're also enmeshed in that. You know, we're taking on maybe some of their energetic energy with that. And that's a fine line, to be concerned, but yet thinking, wow, I am thinking about that person like several times a day, and it's taken away from my own personal life and even my practice. So it's even, you know, watching that aspect of, again, empowering, knowing that people are going to be able to take care of themselves, even in a really challenging situation, that they will find the right people, that I can do only what I'm able to do up to a point, and then I also have to lift off of it and let the digestion of my experience of treatment take place. Right. Any other boundary issues that come up for people? Some of apprehension against, you might be a great massage therapist, but your business practices might be laxed. So some people have this apprehension of the business part of massage. So if you are a sole proprietor, a practitioner, it's also an interesting aspect of, you know, the boundaries around your business practice, as opposed to, that's part of it. That's part of your massage practice. The hands-on healing is a big part, but the business practice is also a big part. So having certain boundaries in your profession from a practical standpoint is also important. Again, the financial part about it, proper paperwork and progress report keeping. You know, those to me are also boundary issues in some way, because if I'm putting that off and doing that, then I am not also adhering to what is most beneficial for the client. And it could be very well too, if I'm not comfortable with it, then I will assign it or hire somebody to do that. So it doesn't mean that if you know that you're not good at it, don't do it. But if you know that you're not good at it, then you know your limitations. So a boundary is also a limitation. I know that I'm not good in this area, I will employ somebody else to do it. And that's also knowing your boundaries, knowing those limitations. That's good boundary practice too. So let's talk about sexuality, because that's a wonderful big topic as a massage therapist, that we know that, as we talked about during break, we cannot cut out human sexuality. It is there. I hear and read ethics and articles around desexualizing the massage session. My own opinion is it's very hard to desexualize something as opposed to not sexualizing it. To me, it might be semantics, but it has a subtle energy shift. If I'm focused on desexualizing as opposed to, not focusing on sexualizing, it's very different. So one aspect is there's an aspect of allowing sexuality in the massage session and knowing what's appropriate and not appropriate. So even from the cursory boundaries around sexuality, one, of course, is draping. So in the Code of Ethics for our state is the aspect of draping where it's comfortable to the client, where it creates safety for the client, and specifically with draping the genital areas of male and female and the breast area for females. In our state, the regulations are, if informed consent, voluntary consent from the female client, that for a breast massage, that the draping would be removed for the treatment and then put back on after the treatment. So one is, I think you should be trained in it, which many schools don't get trained in breast massage. So if a client asks for that for many reasons, that if you're not trained in it, I think that the boundary should be to say that. And I wouldn't, if I'm not trained in massaging the feet, I won't massage the feet. So that's also an aspect. So to also watch your boundary around wanting to come across as a competent massage therapist, and also know your limitations around that. We also know that there's times that the draping, because of certain moves, may get unfurled at times. And I think that we need to put focus on the drape and make people comfortable and make them feel safe. And we have to be careful that there could be the other spectrum, which I experience at times, where there's so much focus on the drape that that becomes the focus of the massage. At Esalen, a massage is done right next to the natural hot baths that are carved out of the mountains, and nudity is open at Esalen. So you're soaking and marinating in the hot tubs, and your massage therapist comes and gets you a few steps down on the deck. If it's a nice day, they keep you outside and put you on the deck, and you get a massage while the whales are going by and the otters are playing, and it's pretty awesome. I don't have the whales and the otters in my office, and I don't have a hot tub, and knowing draping regulations in the States, I do drape. At Esalen, there's just more of a genital drape, because we learn breast massage and because nudity is open. That's known in the Esalen massage at Esalen. Outside of Esalen, there's draping. However, the draping is a little more liberal, meaning that a lot of times massage therapists will take a drape, and let's say it's around the thigh, and it'll be tuck, 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 tuck. I know for me, when that happens to me, I'm like, whoa, 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 what's wrong with my thigh? There's a lot of tucks going on there. Or if I'm face down and the tucking is here, I think that that's more obtrusive than just a little drape here. So when a drape maybe falls a little bit, I don't sound the alarms and go right to the drape, and I'm just put it back on. And I'm a one tuck type of guy. And I do believe that if I do know some of the issues of my client, which might be abuse issues of the past, which I actually have in my intake, if you have experienced physical or sexual abuse in your past and believe that will influence your massage session, please discuss that with me. It doesn't mean, I've only had a few people write anything to that. Doesn't, of course, mean that only them have had the issues, or let alone know that they've had the issues, but at least gives the opportunity. If that's the case, then I know my focus is going to be much more on safety around the drape. If a client wears their undergarments, I'm thinking, I'm going to be more focused on the drape. That's going to create more safety for the client. So I think it's per aspects of the client's own experience and needs that we address it. As I'm maybe doing a certain stretch that client is more resistant to an opening, maybe an opening of a thigh drape, I'm not going to go ahead and force that. I'm going to go ahead and take the client right to that edge and respect that edge. So we need to also respect the aspect of a draping edge. But it doesn't mean that it's a cookie cutter for everybody. So in saying that there's those aspects, and of course the aspect of we don't have direct or indirect sexual contact with our client, and we don't allow our client to have indirect or direct sexual contact. And that includes verbalizing sexual behavior or intentions. The challenge with that is that it's really blurry at times because of the confusion around sexuality. And I'm going to just bring this up. My experience growing up in the United States of America, all of us who have grown up here have probably not have had the most comfortable, safe, loving and nurturing introduction of our sexuality. What I mean by that is, let's say that you grew up in a loving and appropriate family, and that you were touched in certain areas of your body, loving and caring as a child. As you grew up and went through adolescence, that touching probably stopped in those areas. And then that touching probably was more in a sexual connotation, if it was, of course, a healthy and appropriate, to somebody outside the family, maybe a boyfriend or girlfriend. And now to adjust to that frame of the introduction to that kind of touch can be confusing. And it doesn't just mean history, it also means present. Most of us have had challenges and do have challenges just around our own sexuality because of all the expectations of what it should be, how we should be, what's healthy, what's not healthy, and especially around shame. Our society shames sexuality. In the sexuality issues class that I give that you were a part of, you might remember, I listed genitalia, the name of genitalia, up on the board. I put penis, vagina, breasts, and had us, okay, go at it. List all the names that you can think of. And every time I do that, I always get surprised. Now, I'm from Detroit, and I don't think a lot of that stuff surprised me, but there was a time, ba-dump-a-dump, what? Where does that go? What? But as we look at all those names, it's really interesting for me to look at it and say, 99% of those words are derogatory. If they're derogatory, they're shaming. They're not reverent. I don't think that we refer to our genitalia in a reverent vocabulary. If we don't, therefore, it's shaming. So if we know that we have challenging experiences, then we have to realize our client is coming in with confused and challenging experience around sexuality. And I'm not making any excuses at all for inappropriate, manipulative, sexual boundary pushing. And we need to know the difference of that, which means we need to explore our relationship with that. For some people, an erection may not at all have any type of reaction from a massage therapy standpoint. For others, an instant that it might have a big reaction. So it's looking at your own relationship with that, which is important, so that we can have the vocabulary to our clients. Again, we cannot expect, and we should not expect, our client to have the vocabulary. So when you may feel something strange or some weird energy, then you know something is coming in, and I am not being optimal in my practice here as giving a massage. So my belief is that we need to check in. What that means is that we need to check in with our client. Not like, something weird's happening, what's going on? No. What a video camera can pick up. Meaning, let's just say an example would be, I want to stop the session for a moment. I've noticed that as I was walking around the table, your eyes were following me, and your hand draped down on the table, and you brushed against my thigh, and you just told me a sexual joke. Can you tell me what's going on with you? You're going to get a lot more information of what decisions that you should be making next after you get some more information, especially if it's dubious and it's doubtful to you. Instead of just keeping it in and not being sure, it's good to check in. Some things you won't have to check in at all. It might be overt. Somebody says, I want for you to give me an erotic massage. It's overt. Either you state again, this is a therapeutic massage, there will be no sexual behavior. You have a choice to continue, and you have a choice and every right to stop the session. There's a caveat to some of this too, which I'm a man in a man's body. I have not had the experience of walking in the world in a woman's body. My own bias and perception, so bear with me. I have not been sexual prey in society, so it doesn't come up for me as much of feeling in danger. So we have to be careful about our credence of do no harm as a health practitioner, and shaming has seeds of dysfunction. So we have to be careful about shaming our client, especially around sexuality. I work with so many people from a psychotherapy standpoint of the roots of sexual shame. Saying that, again, being a man, if your physicalness is in danger, shaming goes out the door. You take care of yourself, however means that you need to. But we have to know what that point is, too. You know, that's what I mean about trying to get comfortable with your countertransference or knowing your issues around being uncomfortable around sexual behavior or energy that comes up in the room. It's interesting, of course, being a man in this profession, there's statistics that show that there's 17 to 20% male therapists, and there is a lot of grievances that are also brought up from a sexuality standpoint against male therapists. So there's like a misnomer in some way of how those statistics work because of perhaps the transference or countertransference or the way that a man massage therapist may touch a woman in the same way and in the same area that a female massage therapist may do. It can be triggered from that client of it being inappropriate in some way. So it's challenging for us male therapists. And the best way that I know how to do that is also to be very clear and even stating to a client around that my intention, my focus and intention that this is a therapeutic massage and I'm very focused on your safety and your comfortability. If at any time you're not comfortable with anything that I do, including my energy, please bring it to my attention. When I say that to a female client, I believe that brings up some aspects of some added safety and trust with that. And I think that it's interesting that the difference between an overt sexual arousal in an erection, which doesn't, you learned in class that it doesn't necessarily mean that when a man has an erection that it's because of a sexual arousal. It could be many aspects of parasympathetic nervous system and so forth. I asked another man in these classes, I say, I had a woman ask me, Prepo, why does a man get an erection? And I asked the other man here, and I said, can you tell her like the 35,000 different reasons why we get an erection? We don't know. Direction of the wind, we don't know, you know. But I will tell massage therapists that it's probably not as beneficial when a man is face down and that you do a Traeger move that it creates friction and then tell him to turn over right away. Friction creates that stimulation also. So there's things, of course, to note of. One woman said, if a man has an erection, should I bring it to his attention? I'm like, I think he knows, you know, especially if he's not manipulative in it. He's probably going to be maybe a little more uncomfortable than you are, you know. Another massage therapist said, should I throw a towel on it? I'm like, I don't really want to throw a towel on it. So if you're working in an area like the stomach or the thigh that's possible to create that stimulation, well then don't work in that area then. Move to another area. Yes, you don't have to give that trigger point to bring that sucker right down, right? You don't need to do that. You need to just be cognizant of that. And also the more that you are comfortable or allowing for that energy to take place, then the more comfortable that client is being. Again, especially if it's not inappropriate and manipulative. There's another aspect that I don't think that we get enough exploration in that's really edgy, because we are pioneers in touch, absolutely pioneers in touch, is how do we allow sexual energy in a massage session and that it be healing, but it not at all cross the boundaries of ethics. For instance, most of the time, it's overt that you might be able to tell if a man is sexually stimulated, but it's difficult for a therapist to tell if a woman has been sexually stimulated or is feeling sexual energy. I had a session with a woman some years ago, and after the massage session, she asked me if she could talk to me. I said, of course, you can speak whatever is coming up for you. And she said, I've got to tell you, I was very sexually aroused during the session. my first thought was, whoa, uh-oh, what did I do? And quickly, my scanning was, well, I'm clean. I feel I'm clean. Maybe it wasn't clean to her. The second thing that went through it, this is my own personal stuff, was, wow, I didn't pick that up. It was like my own male ego was like, can't even tell when a woman is sexually aroused, people. And she said to me, Prepo, it was nothing that you did intentionally. My husband died 3 years ago, and I have felt no sexual energy in my body. And it felt so wonderful that I have felt that. And she started to cry, I started to cry, and I thought to myself, how do I put that in my notes? how do I going to put that in my soap note? I thought to myself, that's beautiful. That was healing. So the question comes up, which I don't know the answer. How do we allow it at times? As opposed to say, nope, no sexual energy in this massage session. It's energy. It's energy. It's creative energy. And yes, there's appropriate and boundaries around it. So we need to know what that edge is. We need to have that experience to be able to speak up to when it's not appropriate. And also, in some ways, to allow that energy and erection and so forth that is just part of the aspect of touch. It's interesting to me, when I do a Swedish massage, I have a client that is undressed on a table with a drape. I'm fully dressed, and I'm touching the client. I dim the lights. I put on some nice, soft music. No Barry White for massage. Some nice, soft music. I put some oil on my hands, and it has connotations to other areas of our life that might cross over to sexuality. Of course it's going to come up. So the aspect of is, one, to look at the intention. Our greatest tool as massage therapists is our intention in our hands. There are times that the distraction is going to come from us. I will say it, don't need volunteers, but there's times where, from a therapist standpoint, there's an attraction, a physical attraction. We have to be able to readjust our focus and come back to the intention of our hands. I believe that it's very similar to other distractions. If I am massaging somebody's calf and I am massaging it and thinking to myself, did I balance my checkbook right this morning? What was I supposed to get at the store? And then I take a breath, come back to the intention of my hands in the present moment. I take that towel and wipe off the blood because I've been there for 20 minutes. I know that doesn't happen to any of you. And I come back to the intention and the present moment of my focus. I believe that at times that happens in an attraction standpoint, that we can be able to utilize tools to come back to it. It doesn't mean that we are wrong, bad, inappropriate. It is, however, a interesting issue to look at if it's repetitive, if we are not getting our own personal nurturing and sexual needs taken care of in our personal life, that we believe that we are getting it in our professional life by that kind of touch. That's a countertransference to have to look at. But up until that point, I think it's really beneficial for us to really be able to know and allow and be able to deal with it, just like other issues that may come up in a massage that from a non-sexual standpoint. It's inherent of touch. It's part of it. Nurturing can get confused with sexuality. Sensuous touch can get confused with sexual touch. Compassionate touch can get confused with sexual touch. So it's up to us to be able to work on and understand from our standpoint, and also have the vocabulary to be able to relay that to a client in proper boundaries. Any thoughts or questions? We have another minute or two. I'm leaving you only a couple minutes for a big topic like this.
I feel like you can do such wonderful work letting sexual blockages be removed during massage. like allowing people to feel. But I think the trouble just comes when it's like a personal, like when it comes like in a relational like way. Like you can allow them to feel that in their own space.
Mhm.
You know?
So are you saying if you have a personal relationship, or just because it's between two people?
Right. I'm saying like to allow someone to feel like openly on the table in their own space, and where it's not as like focused on you, or it's not personalized.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's different to say, it's okay for you to intentionally focus on your sexual arousal. That's not appropriate in a
Yeah.
therapeutic massage. What I'm talking more about is that the involuntary aspect of it coming up, and that even if you know and you see that it's coming up because maybe the person is uncomfortable, is to tell them, breathe. Now put intention in your body to move the energy. You can utilize that energy for it to move. Have them move that energy throughout their body. So it's also the aspect of not shaming that the possibility of that energy can come up, or the confusion of it. It's different than saying, focus on it and we'll work with it. No. And it's interesting that I have had clients sometimes call up, and appropriate question is, I have erectile dysfunction. Can massage at all help me with that? And they're not talking about to massage the genital areas. They're talking about blood flow. If I get a full body massage or areas of my body, will that help? That person is not being a pervert or inappropriate. They're asking questions from a sexuality standpoint that's knowing that is massage in that. We don't learn in school or in that aspect of those areas. So what I'm saying is, like, even allow to the aspect of, that's a really interesting question. I don't know. Or yes, possibly it can. But whether you decide to focus on that as a healing issue, then there's going to be real clear boundaries that need to be stated with that. We're going to be really focused on moving the blood flow and the energy throughout your body. And here's the boundary issues that we're also going to be focused on. So. Anything else? There's so much to ethics. Yeah, so much to it. Wonderful topic. So I encourage you and support you to go out in your practice to experience the edges, to experience what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, and through your experience to also share with other massage therapists, as we stated earlier, to bring up topics to state boards and national boards, the areas of ethics that we need to more attention. This is our profession. We have a say in it. So, thanks for coming. Thanks for watching. Okay, great.